The distress signal came through the deep space monitors at exactly 0347 hours, ship time. Captain Kim Day was already awake, standing in the observation deck of the Earth survey vessel Aurora, watching the stars. He could not sleep these days. Something felt wrong in the galaxy, though he could not say what. "Captain, we have an emergency transmission," called Lieutenant Park Yuna from the bridge. Her voice carried an edge of fear that made Day's stomach tighten. He walked quickly to the communication station. The signal was weak, breaking apart every few seconds. Static filled most of it, but underneath was something that made his skin crawl. It sounded like crying. Like someone begging for help in a language he had never heard before. "Where is it coming from?" Day asked. Park Yuna pointed to her screen. The source marker blinked red at the very edge of their star charts. "The void margin, sir. Deep in the forbidden zone." Day felt his blood turn cold. Every child in human space knew about the void margin. It was the edge of known galaxy, marked with warnings in every language. The Galactic Confederation had made it clear 200 years ago when humanity first joined them. Nobody goes beyond the margin. Ever. No questions asked. "Run it through the translation matrix," Day ordered. The computer worked for several minutes, trying to match the sounds to known languages. Finally, it gave up. "No match found in Galactic Database," the machine voice announced. "Language patterns suggest extreme age. Estimated origin, 8 to 10,000 years. 8,000 years. That was older than the Confederation itself. Older than most of the great alien civilizations that ruled the galaxy." "Sir," said Navigator Li Jin, looking up from his station. "The signal is repeating. Same pattern every 4 to 7 minutes. It has been going for a very long time." "How long?" Li Jin checked his readings twice before answering. "The computer estimates it started transmitting about 3,000 years ago." Day stared at the screen. Someone had been calling for help for 3,000 years. And nobody had answered. "Set course for Nexus Prime," he said finally. "Emergency speed." The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council took place in the Great Crystal Chamber at the heart of Nexus Prime. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their assigned sections, each group looking different from the others. Some breathed different air. Some lived in water tanks. Others were made of living energy. Day stood in the center of the chamber, feeling very small and very human. He played the distress signal for the assembled delegates. The reaction was immediate and strange. The proud Altarians, who usually sat tall and confident, seemed to shrink in their seats. The Vex Collective, normally buzzing with constant communication between their hive minds, fell silent. Even the Zephyrian traders, who would normally be interested in anything new and potentially profitable, looked away. High Counselor Veltar rose from his seat. His blue skin had turned a darker shade, which Day knew meant anger or fear. "This signal comes from beyond the void margin." "Yes, sir. Someone needs help. The void accords are absolute, human. No contact beyond the margin. The matter is closed." Day felt his temper rising. "But it is a distress signal. They have been calling for 3,000 years." The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted in their various languages, but Day could tell they were all saying the same thing. "No. Absolutely not. Never." Veltar raised his hand for silence. "Captain Day, your species is young. You do not understand the wisdom of your elders. Some doors should never be opened. Some cries should never be answered." "I do not understand," Day said. "Why would you ignore someone who needs help?" The silence that followed felt heavy and wrong. Day looked around the chamber and saw something in all those alien eyes that made his heart pound. They were not angry at him. They were afraid. All of them. These ancient, powerful species that could destroy planets and move stars were terrified of whoever was sending that signal. "The vote is called," Veltar announced. "All in favor of investigating the signal." Not one hand, claw, tentacle, or energy field moved. All opposed. Every delegate in the chamber voted no. "The matter is decided. Captain Day, you will return to your ship and delete all records of this signal. You will never speak of it again. This is not a request." Day wanted to argue, but he could see it was useless. He saluted and left the chamber. Outside, he walked slowly through the corridors of Nexus Prime, thinking. Lieutenant Park Yuna and Navigator Li Jin were waiting for him at the docking bay. "What did they say, Captain?" Yuna asked. "They said no. They said to forget about it and never mention it again." "Are we going to obey?" Day looked at his young crew members. Both of them had that look in their eyes that he recognized from his own mirror. The look that said some things were more important than following orders. "No," he said quietly. "We are not." Back on the Aurora, Day called his crew together. 30 humans, all volunteers, all knowing this might be the end of their careers. He played the signal one more time. "I cannot order you to come with me," he told them. "But I am going to answer that call. Someone out there has been crying for help for 3,000 years. Every species in this galaxy has decided to ignore them. I cannot do that. I will not do that." The vote was unanimous. They would go. The journey to the void margin took 3 weeks. Captain Kim Day watched his crew grow more nervous with each passing day. Strange things began happening as they moved deeper into forbidden space. Engineer Choi Hyun reported that the ship's computers were acting oddly. They would sometimes display symbols that looked like writing, but in no language anyone recognized. The symbols would appear for a few seconds, then vanish. "It is like the ship is trying to remember something," Hyun said, frowning at his screens. Communications Officer Han Solo had an even stranger report. "Captain, I keep hearing voices in the static. Not words exactly, but feelings. Like someone is trying to comfort me." Navigator Lee Jin was having dreams. Every night, he saw the same vision. A great city floating in space, filled with tall beings who moved like dancers. In his dreams, they were always reaching out toward him, asking him to come home. "Home to where?" Day asked him. "I do not know, sir. But in the dream, it feels like I have been away for a very long time." On the 20th day, they reached the edge of known space. The last navigation beacon from the Confederation fell behind them. Ahead lay the void margin, a region of space that looked empty on all their instruments. "Beginning scan of the Forbidden Zone," announced Science Officer Dr. Oh Min-ho. His voice was tight with excitement and fear. The sensors found nothing at first. Empty space, background radiation, a few dead rocks floating in the darkness. Then, as they moved deeper, the distress signal grew stronger. "Getting a clearer reading," reported Park Yuna. "The source is..." "Captain, this is impossible." "What is impossible?" "The signal is coming from a structure. A big one. But it should not be there. Our long-range sensors show nothing." Day felt ice in his veins. "Show me." The main screen lit up with sensor data. According to every instrument they had, the space ahead was empty. But the distress signal was definitely coming from coordinates that should contain nothing but vacuum. "Take us in closer. Careful." As the Aurora moved forward, reality seemed to shimmer around them. The empty space began to change. First, there were faint shadows that might have been tricks of light. Then the shadows grew darker and more solid. Finally, they saw it. The space station hung in orbit around a dying red star. It was massive, easily the size of a small city. But it was not built like any station Day had ever seen. Instead of the straight lines and metal corridors that humans preferred, this structure curved and flowed like something alive. Its hull was made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light. "How big is it?" Day whispered. "Approximately 12 kilometers long, 8 wide," Dr. Minho replied. "Captain, the design, it predates anything in our records. This is ancient." The distress signal was much stronger now. Through the static, they could hear what sounded like voices. Not words, but something that felt like music made of sadness. "Any signs of life?" Day asked. Han Solo checked her instruments. "Weak power readings. Minimal life support. Whatever is in there is barely surviving. Open a channel." Solo worked at her controls for several minutes. "I cannot get through their communication system. It is too different from ours. But Captain, I think they know we are here." The great station began to change. Lights appeared along its hull, flickering like stars being born. A section near what might have been the front began to open, revealing a docking bay that glowed with soft blue light. "They are inviting us in," said Lee Jin, his voice full of wonder. Day stared at the opening. Every regulation he had ever learned told him not to go near an unknown alien structure. But the signal that had brought them here was still calling, weaker now but somehow more hopeful. "Take us in." Slowly. The Aurora moved toward the docking bay. As they got closer, Day could see that the bay was designed for ships, but not ships like theirs. The docking clamps were shaped differently, meant for vessels that curved instead of flying straight. The bay doors sealed behind them as soon as they were inside. Atmosphere flooded the chamber, and their instruments showed it was breathable for humans. "Full environmental suits," Day ordered. "We do not know what we are walking into." The airlock opened with a soft whisper. Beyond lay a corridor that curved gently upward, its walls covered with patterns that seemed to shift in the light. The air smelled of flowers and something else, something that reminded Day of home though he could not say why. They had walked for only a few minutes when they saw the first one. It stood 7 feet tall, its skin shimmering with colors that flowed like water. Its face was almost human, but the eyes were larger, more luminous. It wore robes that seemed to be made of light itself. When it spoke, the words formed not in the air but directly in their minds. "Welcome," it said, and the voice carried such sadness that several of the crew members began to cry. "We have been waiting so long for someone to come." Behind the first being, others appeared. Dozens of them, all tall and graceful, all with those large, sorrowful eyes. They moved like dancers, but Day could see that many of them were sick. Their light was dim, their movements slow. "We are the Canary," the first being continued, speaking inside their thoughts. "We are the last of our people. We have been alone here for 8,000 years. One of the beings approached Captain Day. When it reached out to touch his gloved hand, he felt something he had never experienced before. For just a moment, he could feel what every living thing around him was feeling. The hope of his crew, the ancient sadness of the Canary, even the faint pulse of life from the plants growing in hidden gardens somewhere in the station. "You came," the being whispered in his mind. After all this time, someone finally came. Elder Zenthare led Captain Kim Day through the curved corridors of the dying station. The walls were covered with pictures that seemed to move when nobody was looking directly at them. They showed scenes of the galaxy as it used to be, thousands of years ago. "Your history books lie about us," Zenthare said, his thoughts flowing directly into Day's mind. "They call us many names. Emotional parasites. Mind invaders. Destroyers of free will. All lies." Dr. O. Minho walked beside another Canary called Silverin, who was their keeper of memories. Together, they entered a vast library where knowledge was stored not in books but in glowing crystals that hung from the ceiling like stars. "Touch one," Silverin instructed. When Minho placed his hand on a blue crystal, images flooded his mind. He saw the galaxy as it was 8,000 years ago. Hundreds of species, young and growing, learning to travel between the stars. And watching over them all were the Canary. "We could feel emotions," Silverin explained. "Not just our own, but the feelings of every living being around us. When a species prepared for war, we felt their anger before they fired the first shot. When they planned to destroy another people, we felt the fear of the victims before they even knew they were in danger." The crystal showed Minho scenes of Canary ships arriving at worlds on the edge of conflict. They never brought weapons. They simply stood among the angry crowds and let everyone feel what their enemies felt. When soldiers could suddenly feel the love that their targets had for their children, when leaders could feel the terror they were about to cause, wars ended before they began. "You prevented conflicts just by being there," Minho whispered in amazement. "For 3,000 years, we kept peace in the galaxy. We stopped 17 genocides. We prevented 43 wars that would have killed billions. We helped species learn to understand each other instead of destroying each other." But the crystal showed something else. As the centuries passed, the galaxy's leaders began to change. They grew tired of feeling guilty every time they wanted to do something selfish. They hated having their emotions reflected back at them by the Canary. "They could not commit their sins while we were watching," Zenthare said, joining them in the memory chamber. "Every cruel thought, every greedy plan, every hateful impulse, we made them feel it as clearly as their victims would. They began to see us not as helpers, but as judges." The conspiracy started small. A few species began spreading rumors that the Canary were dangerous. They said the empaths could control minds, that they were feeding on emotions like vampires. None of it was true, but fear spread faster than truth. Engineer Choi Hyun was in another part of the station, trying to repair their failing life support systems. A young Canary named Telvinas worked beside him, his touch allowing Hyun to feel exactly what was wrong with each broken component. "Why did you not fight back?" Hyun asked as they worked. "You could have made them understand." Telvinas was quiet for a long moment. "We tried. But our gift works both ways. We could make others feel empathy, but we also felt their hatred for us. Imagine feeling the rage of an entire galaxy directed at you and your children. Many of our people went mad from it." In the memory chamber, the crystals showed the final years. One by one, species left the Galactic Council whenever the Canary tried to speak. Trade agreements excluded them. Their colonies were blockaded. Finally, the great powers of the galaxy issued an ultimatum. "Leave forever, or we will destroy you all," Silverin said, his mental voice heavy with old pain. They gave us 1 month to gather our people and go beyond the edge of known space. But you were helping them, Dr. Minho protested.
Yes.
And that was exactly the problem. The exile had been brutal. Millions of Canary were loaded onto ships barely adequate for the journey. Many died on the way to the void margin. Those who survived built this station around a dying star, as far from the galaxy as they could get. We sent the distress signal, Zenthare explained to Captain Day as they stood in the station's control center, not because we expected rescue, but because we wanted someone, somewhere, to know what really happened. We wanted the truth to survive, even if we did not. For 3,000 years, they had broadcast their story into the void. Their population slowly dwindled. Their technology failed piece by piece. Now only a few thousand remained of a species that once numbered in the billions. The Confederation made laws forbidding contact with us, Zenthare continued. They called them the Void Accords. But the real purpose was to make sure we could never return to remind them of what they had done. Communications Officer Han Solo was monitoring the station's historical records when she discovered something that made her call for the captain immediately. Sir, you need to see this. The Void Accords were not just about keeping the Canary away. They were about keeping everyone away from the Canary. Any species that tried to help them was threatened with destruction. The records showed 3 different civilizations that had attempted to aid the Canary over the centuries. All 3 were destroyed by mysterious accidents that the Confederation blamed on technical failures. Captain Day felt sick as the truth became clear. The galaxy's greatest civilizations had not just committed a terrible crime. They had spent 8,000 years covering it up and silencing anyone who might expose them. What do you want us to do? Day asked Zenthare. The elder Canary touched Day's hand, and through the contact, the captain felt the weight of 8 millennia of exile and pain. But underneath the sadness was something else. Hope. Your species is different, Zenthare said. You came when no one else would. You listened when everyone else turned away. Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to remember what conscience feels like. Day looked around at his crew, all of whom had been listening through their empathic connections with various Canary. He saw determination in their faces, and something more. He saw humans who had learned what it felt like to truly understand another being's pain. We can save some of you, he said finally. Take you back to Earth as refugees. Or, Zenthare said quietly, you could do something more dangerous. You could tell the galaxy the truth. Captain Kim Day stood in the cargo bay of the Aurora, watching the last group of Canary refugees board the evacuation shuttles. 347 survivors, all that remained of their ancient civilization. Elder Zenthare approached him, moving slowly on legs weakened by years of malnutrition. You could still take us quietly to Earth, the elder said, his thoughts gentle in Day's mind. Your leaders would accept us as refugees. We could live in peace. Day looked at the Canary around him. Children who had never seen sunlight, adults who remembered stories of a galaxy that once welcomed their people. That would save you, but it would not save the truth. The truth is dangerous, young captain. The Confederation will destroy anyone who threatens their secret. Then they will have to destroy us. As the Aurora left the dying station behind, Day recorded his message in the ship's communication center. Every word was carefully chosen, every fact double-checked against the Canary records. When he finished, he looked at Communications Officer Han Solo. Transmit on all frequencies. Every world, every station, every ship in the galaxy. Make sure everyone hears this. The message went out across space at the speed of light. It told the true story of the Canary exile, backed up with historical records that the Confederation thought were destroyed forever. It explained how the galaxy's most peaceful species had been cast out for the crime of making others feel empathy. The response was immediate. On Nexus Prime, High Counselor Veltar watched the transmission with growing horror. Around the Emergency Council chamber, representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as their ancestors' greatest shame was exposed to the galaxy. Seal all communication channels, Veltar ordered. Issue a statement that this is human propaganda. Sir, his aide whispered, the humans included memory crystal recordings. The evidence is overwhelming. Within hours, the Confederation issued new orders. Earth was declared a rogue state. All human colonies were ordered to surrender the Canary refugees or face military action. Any ship or station that aided the humans would be considered enemies of galactic peace. Admiral Park Sung-ho received the ultimatum while standing on the bridge of the Terra Defense Fleet flagship, positioned near Luna. Through the observation windows, he could see alien warships taking positions around the Sol system. Hundreds of them, representing the combined military might of the Confederation. "Admiral," said his aide, Commander Yunjiwoo, "they are demanding we turn over the Canary and execute Captain Day and his crew as traitors." Park looked at the tactical display. Earth's fleet was outnumbered 10-1. "Send them our response. Earth does not abandon those who seek sanctuary. Earth does not execute heroes." On Earth itself, President Lim Yoon-ji called an emergency session of the Global Assembly. In the Great Hall where humanity's leaders gathered, 12 Canary refugees stood silently behind her podium. Their presence filled the chamber with a wave of empathy so powerful that hardened politicians found themselves weeping for people they had never met. "Today we face a choice," President Lim announced to the Assembly and to the billions watching around the world. "We can bow to threats and abandon innocent beings to save ourselves. Or we can stand for what is right, no matter the cost." Representative after representative rose to speak. Some argued for surrender, pointing out that humanity could not fight the entire galaxy. But more spoke of conscience, of the responsibility that came with knowing the truth. The final vote was overwhelming. Earth would not abandon the Canary. The news spread across human space like wildfire. On Mars, Governor Kim Tae-young declared his colony a sanctuary world. The asteroid miners of the belt voted to hide any Canary who needed shelter. Even the distant colonies beyond Pluto sent messages of support. But the most remarkable change was happening to the humans who worked directly with the Canary refugees. Marine Sergeant Kang Min-soo was assigned to guard the Canary shelter in Seoul. On his third day, a young Canary named Telvinus asked to shake his hand. The moment their skin touched, Min-soo felt something incredible. He could suddenly sense the emotions of everyone around him. The fear of the Canary children, wondering if they would be safe. The determination of his fellow Marines, ready to die protecting innocent beings. The love of families across the city, holding their children closer as they watched the news of the gathering alien fleet. "This is what they were afraid of," Min-soo whispered in amazement. "This is why they exiled you." Telvinus nodded sadly. When you can feel what others feel, it becomes impossible to hurt them. The galaxy's leaders knew that if their people learned our gift, there would be no more wars, no more cruelty. Only understanding. The bonding process spread quickly. Canary refugees were paired with human volunteers, creating the first empathic connections between the species. Dr. Sarah Kim at the Institute for Xenobiology studied the phenomenon with wonder. "It is not mind control," she reported to the Global Council. "It is the opposite. Both species remain completely free to make their own choices. But they make those choices while truly understanding how others feel." The alien fleet around Earth grew larger each day. Veltar arrived personally aboard the massive dreadnought Righteous Judgment, bringing with him the military leaders of 8 different species. "Give us the parasites," he transmitted to Earth, "and we will allow your species to remain in the Confederation. Refuse, and we will treat you as we treated the others who aided them." President Lim's response was broadcast across the solar system. "We know what you did to the 3 species who helped the Canary before us. We know you destroyed them and called it accidents. But we are not afraid. Some things are worth dying for." On Lunar Base, Admiral Park watched the alien fleet move into attack formation. His own ships, pathetically outnumbered, took defensive positions around Earth. "Admiral," Commander Yoon reported, "we are receiving surrender offers from several human colonies. They are afraid." "Let them choose," Park replied. "Fear is understandable. But courage is choosing to do right even when you are afraid." In the Canary shelters across Earth, the refugees felt the approaching battle through their empathic bonds with their human partners. Elder Zenthere, now living in a small apartment in Seoul, touched the mind of every Canary on the planet. "They are willing to die for us," he said to his people. "These humans, whom we met only weeks ago, are ready to sacrifice everything to protect us." "What do we do?" asked young Telvinus. Zenthere was quiet for a long moment, feeling the determination of 7 billion humans preparing to face impossible odds rather than betray their conscience. "We show them what we showed the galaxy long ago," he said finally. "We show them what it means to truly understand each other." The battle for Earth began at sunrise on March 15, 2388. Captain Kim Dae stood on the bridge of the defense station New Hope, watching through the viewports as nearly 1,000 alien warships moved into attack formation. Earth's modest fleet of 200 vessels looked like toys compared to the massive dreadnoughts that blotted out the stars. Admiral Park Sung-ho's voice came over the communication system, calm and steady despite the impossible odds. "All ships, this is Admiral Park. Today we fight not for territory or resources, but for the right to show compassion. Hold the line. On the Altarian flagship Righteous Judgment, High Counselor Veltar gave the order to attack. Destroy their military targets first. Leave the planet intact. We will need somewhere to put the survivors when they surrender. But as the alien weapons powered up, something unexpected happened throughout the human fleet. Every Kenari refugee who had bonded with a human volunteer opened their empathic connection to maximum range. The gift that had once made them shepherds of the galaxy now reached out to touch every mind within 100,000 kilometers. Captain Velkarin of the Altarian cruiser Stormbringer was reaching for the firing controls when the wave hit him. Suddenly, he could feel everything that the humans around Earth were feeling. He felt the terror of a young pilot in the fighter squadron ahead, a woman named Lieutenant Park who was thinking about her 5-year-old daughter waiting for her at home. He felt the grim determination of Engineer Choi aboard the cargo ship Mercy, who had volunteered for this battle even though he had never fired a weapon in his life. He felt the love of families holding each other as they watched the sky fill with enemy ships. I cannot, Velkarin whispered, his hand frozen over the weapon controls. I cannot fire on them. The same thing was happening across the alien fleet. On the Vex Collective Hive ship primary node, the shared consciousness that controlled 10,000 drones suddenly experienced human emotions for the first time. They felt individual love, personal fear, the fierce protectiveness that humans showed for their young. The hive mind, which had never known anything but cold logic, began to weep. On the Zephyrian trade vessel Golden Prophet, Captain Zexvar felt the empathy of the human medical ships that had positioned themselves between the warships and Earth. These ships carried no weapons, only doctors and nurses ready to help anyone who was wounded, even their enemies. They would heal us, he said in wonder to his crew. Even as we come to destroy them, they would heal us. Across the vast alien fleet, weapon systems powered down one by one. Ship after ship broke formation as their crews experienced what their enemies were truly feeling. The artificial hatred that had been built up over centuries of propaganda crumbled in the face of genuine understanding. Admiral Park watched in amazement as the attack formation dissolved into chaos. What is happening out there? The Kenari, said Captain Day, his voice filled with awe. He was still linked with Elder Zenthare, and through that connection, he could feel the empathic wave spreading across space. They are showing them what we feel. On the bridge of righteous judgment, High Counselor Veltar felt his carefully constructed worldview falling apart. Through the Kenari connection, he could feel the love that President Lim had for her people, the way she would rather die than betray innocent beings who had asked for her protection. This is what we were afraid of, he whispered to his aide. This is what we tried to destroy. The battle that was supposed to last hours ended without a single shot being fired. Instead of attacking, ships from both fleets began moving toward each other. Human captains invited alien crews aboard their vessels. Alien commanders shared their real histories with humans who could finally understand why they had been so afraid. On Earth, crowds gathered in the streets to watch the impossible sight of former enemies working together in space above them. Kenari refugees walked among the humans, their empathic abilities allowing perfect communication between species that had never understood each other before. The Confederation's old order collapsed not through violence, but through the simple, revolutionary act of forced empathy. When beings could truly feel what their supposed enemies felt, it became impossible to hate them. Within days, the galaxy split into two camps. The older species who still refused to accept the truth about the Kenari formed a smaller confederation, retreating to their home systems and closing their borders. But the younger species, and many individuals from the older ones, chose a different path. They came to Earth. Representatives from dozens of worlds arrived to meet the Kenari refugees and learn their gift. Scientists worked with Kenari empaths to understand how the bonding process worked. Diplomats who had spent centuries negotiating through fear and mistrust discovered what it was like to truly understand their counterparts. 5 years later, Captain Kim Day, now Admiral Day and permanently bonded with Elder Zenthare, stood in the observation deck of the rebuilt Kenari Sanctuary Station. It orbited Earth now, no longer a place of exile but a center of learning where beings from across the galaxy came to study empathy and understanding. Through the viewports, he could see mixed crews of humans and aliens working together on construction projects. The old barriers between species were disappearing as more beings learned to share emotions the way the Kenari did. In the station's gardens, children from a dozen different worlds played together. A young human girl chased an Altarian child who could change colors when he laughed. A small Kenari taught a group of Vex drones how to feel individual emotions instead of just shared thoughts. Is this what you hoped for? Day asked his bonded partner. Zentheore's mental voice was warm with contentment. It is more than we dared to dream. When the galaxy shunned us, we thought compassion was dead. But your species proved that some beings will always choose to help others, no matter the cost. Day smiled as he watched a group of young diplomats from Earth and Altair working together to write new peace treaties, their understanding enhanced by Canary empaths who helped them feel what beings on both sides truly wanted. The galaxy had tried to kill compassion 8,000 years ago. But humanity had refused to let it die. And in saving the Canary, they had saved the soul of civilization itself. The shepherds had returned, but this time they were not alone.